Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at KAKM for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. Up first, a dense smoke advisory out for the central interior areas here. That's for tonight, tomorrow, until about 6 p.m. Saturday. And that's for dense smoke, occasionally reducing visibilities to a mile or less, in some cases even maybe down to a quarter mile like they saw earlier today in Tanana, but that'd be late overnight and into the early morning hours with improving conditions in the afternoon. Moving on to fire danger, got an area of high fire danger back out over the Kuskokwim and southern Yukon Delta, not so much in the north. They had a pretty good band of showers dropped in there during the day today, with also some showers back across the Kuskokwim Valley occurring. So mostly down over the Kuskokwim Delta, the high fire dangers, and a little bit of area there near the Lotto Hills and off to the east a little bit. And then some extreme fire dangers. Looks like it's up over the southwest portion of the upper Yukon Valley with some high fire danger extending west there across the Koyukuk and Kobuk valleys, and then slipping on to the west there to about Selawik. And the Copper River Basin, some high fire danger occurring over the central areas there, and extreme fire danger down, looks like in the Iliamna, Pedro Bay areas, possibly there around Iliamna Lake, with high fire dangers down into northeast Bristol Bay, where temperatures reach the upper 70s today in the King Salmon area. And looking at the satellite imagery yesterday, we had this gale force low move on shore near Cape Fairweather and then shift on up toward Whitehorse, bringing the gusty winds and rain in over the northern panhandle. Had a band of showers that brought all the rain there to the Alaska Range, Denali Park areas, and back over the eastern interior. And then this system dropping southeastward, and a low pressure area bringing some rain, gusty winds into the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Today, we've got that system here to the northwest. There's a band of pretty moderate showers moving into the Yukon Delta during the day today. St. Mary's picked up about 1/4 inch of rain. Showers into the northern Kuskokwim Valley areas there, but lighter amounts, McGrath, and then some scattered showers back to the north and west, with clouds basically up here over the northwest interior, but clearing out over the eastern interior today, and some sunshine there. Also sunshine from Copper River Basin back across south central Alaska to even more sunshine over Bristol Bay. This is just a band of high clouds rotating northward across the area there. And then you can see the high clouds spreading over Kodiak Island. The main rain producing cloud in this area is back right down in here, and then some more moisture coming northward. So look for the rain to spread into Kodiak Island tonight with the gusty winds, and winds gusting as high as 45 miles an hour at Cold Bay this afternoon, with pretty gusty wind and more rain over the eastern Aleutians. And then that frontal boundary extending back to the west there. You can see all the clear skies there, kind of St. Paul right on the edge. Had some fog this morning, but clearing just off to the west there. Sunshine here across Bristol Bay up into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, but the northern Kuskokwim had some showers, and then the moderate showers here from about the Lotto Hills extending back across the Yukon Delta. Scattered showers up over the Kobuk Valley and the lower Koyukuk there. Scattered thunderstorms. The only place they occurred today in the state was up here over the eastern Brooks Range area. And then the areas of smoke here from the central interior up into the upper Yukon Valley and then on eastward across to the upper Tanana Valley. Scattered showers along the Alaska Range, northeastern Copper River Basin, and the southeast coast here, kind of a cloudy, cool day. Temperatures in the 50s up over the northern areas to more sunshine, resulting in temperatures in the 60s to lower 70s down over the southern areas there with high pressure off the coast. And for tonight, variably cloudy here across the southeast coast with relatively light variable winds here in that area under basically a ridge of high pressure. Rain and wind spread up over Kodiak Island during the evening and overnight hours tonight with rain chances increasing. Look for the clouds to increase this evening, and then the chance of rain after midnight in across Bristol Bay. Periods of rain here along the Alaska Peninsula and continued breezing conditions. That'll extend all the way out to the eastern Aleutians. And then some more rain and showers here with that second 997 millibar low there over the west central Aleutian areas. Otherwise up to the north, high pressure, so low clouds and fog. Areas of IFR there for the St. Lawrence Island area in across the Bering Strait coast. And then possible IFR forming again tonight there along the western Arctic coast, possibly even the eastern areas. Central Arctic coast, North Slope staying mostly clear with light winds all through this area. And again, the dense smoke in over the central interior, but areas of smoke again over the Tanana and upper Yukon Valley areas. Should be basically dry here with just some variable clouds over the Copper River Basin. Scattered showers possible over the western Alaska Range and also back here. Now that upper level low kind of shifting back to the west a little bit, so those showers will be scattering out and tending to taper off, but kind of right along the Kuskokwim Mountains there. Be the shower activity tonight, a little more active this evening than it will be after midnight tonight. And then forecast for tomorrow, see this band of moisture and the frontal boundary slips on to the north. If I push the right button here. And so rain spreading up to the North Gulf Coast areas and over the Kenai Peninsula. Looks like most of the rain will be over western Prince William Sound, the heaviest precipitation, southern Kenai Peninsula, and then across the inlet here on the west side of Cook Inlet to the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range areas. Just isolated showers in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon, mostly cloudy with isolated showers in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon for Anchorage and Palmer areas with the probably the same forecast down toward Kenai. A little bit better chance of seeing some rain in the afternoon there for Homer and Seldovia, and definitely here over Bristol Bay, and that's sliding up into the Kuskokwim Delta areas where tomorrow the Yukon Delta will be dry, and then mostly sunny, warmer temperatures into the 70s to lower 80s here over the eastern interior. Still that areas of smoke. Again, thickest over the central interior, but that'll still be over the upper Yukon and Tanana Valley areas. And then again, still unstable enough for some showers to kick off there over the eastern Brooks Range area, but dry back to the west. Patchy areas of low clouds and fog along the Arctic coast with light winds up in that area. And then looks like rain for the Pribilof Islands tomorrow, that front moving up and spreading the moisture northward there. Winds basically east 15 to maybe as high as 25 miles per hour. Then down here on the edge of, or just on the edge of the next system coming onto the chart there, that good southerly flow moves quite rapidly and brings some gale force winds and rain into the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay area. And then approaching Kodiak Island, looks like rain spreading to Kodiak in the afternoon, but rain heavy at times along the Alaska Peninsula, with rain spreading back up along the southwest coast, mostly over the western Bristol Bay areas to maybe as far north as possibly Bethel in the late afternoon hours. Otherwise, it'll be variably cloudy farther to the north there, but the winds on the increase, again, gale force winds all through this area. Small craft advisories for the southwest coast here. Pribilof Islands, scattered showers back over the western Aleutians, that low center trekking up almost right over Nikolsky there. So periods of rain for the Unalaska Dutch Harbor area. And then this trough signifies the remnants of that front that comes up to the north tomorrow. Moves northward, just a band of clouds with that, but it could be enough to it to kick off some scattered thunderstorm activity over the upper Tanana 40-mile country, and possibly showers or isolated thunderstorms over the northeastern part of the Copper River Basin areas, but with high pressure building here off the coast. Look for those southerly winds to pick up through the Copper River Delta both tomorrow afternoon and even on Sunday here in the afternoon hours, getting a little gusty. Same thing through Turnagain Arm with those winds. Gusty up to maybe 45 miles an hour for the upper hillside of Anchorage tomorrow afternoon, and possibly not to quite that high on Sunday here. Otherwise, variably cloudy with northwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour here across the Panhandle, with that high building right off the coastline there, lower pressure in over the interior. And for temperatures this afternoon along the Panhandle, look like this: 73 with sunshine there at Annette Island, 64 over at Klawock, 58 at Sitka. You can see where the clouds are hanging in, and even some early morning showers up around the Juneau area where they had 57 this afternoon. But Skagway pushed up to 61. Same temperature there at Cordova, with temperatures running in the 60s to lower 70s. Both Palmer and Anchorage up to 73 this afternoon, with 69 at Kenai, 68 up at Gulkana, 69 at Northway. Same temperature there at Fairbanks. And then cooler with that heavier smoke back toward Tanana, 58 degrees there, 62 up at Bettles, with Anaktuvuk a degree warmer at 63, 68 at Fort Yukon. Temperatures along the Arctic coast range from just 37 there at Barrow to 54 over at Dead Horse, 47 degrees at Wainwright, and then 50 at Point Lay. Otherwise, upper 40s to mid 50s here over the northwest part of the state. Actually, all in the 50s here in the northwest, with 57 at Buckland. 46 degrees this afternoon at Nome, but Golovin pushed up to 50. Same temperature there at Unalakleet, with St. Michael at 48, 50 degrees at St. Mary's. And temperatures range from clouds and showers at McGrath, 58 degrees to 69 degrees, and some sun down at Bethel and also at Kipnuk there right on the coast. Out to the southwest, lower to mid 50s for the Pribilofs, upper 40s for the Aleutians, and then 52 in Unalaska. Mostly in the 50s here across the Alaska Peninsula, warming up as you head northeast to 77 degrees at King Salmon, 73 at Dillingham, Togiak up to 70 this afternoon, Kodiak at 59. Excuse me. Lows for tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle. Not about the same temperature pattern here through much of interior Alaska, upper 40s to lower to mid 50s, warmest over the upper Yukon Valley there, and back here over the southwest interior, with 30s and 40s up along the Arctic coast, and then mostly in the 40s to lower 50s across the North Slope areas, a little cooler through the Brooks Range. 50s here from Bristol Bay down the Alaska Peninsula, 40s out over the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, again, warming trend continues here over the interior, especially the central and eastern interior, with 80 degrees forecast for both Fairbanks and Eagle. 70s, mid-70s, extending all the way out to the eastern Seward Peninsula areas. So definitely warmer from what you saw today there, 64 in Nome, up considerably from today's 46, with upper 60s to near 70 there across the Yukon Delta. So more sun, less in the way of showers there, although down to the south here where the clouds and rain will be spreading in, just the upper 50s for Bristol Bay, upper 50s, lower 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. And still, the Susitna Valley could push up towards 70 before the clouds thicken up tomorrow afternoon, but basically looking at temperatures in the 60s here. Copper River Basin, Gulkana 71. Flying weather, so some IFR showing up here over western Prince William Sound during the day tomorrow. This map for tomorrow afternoon, so marginal VFR up to the central and western North Gulf Coast areas. VFR conditions forecast for the Yakutat area down the entire Panhandle to Dixon Entrance. Look for some marginal VFR on the eastern Arctic coast, but there could be some of that in the morning hours here, even on the central and western areas like you saw today. And then some marginal VFR slipping up the west side of Cook Inlet there to the eastern slopes of the Alaska Range, with IFR from the Seward or the Kenai Peninsula down across the east side of Kodiak Island to the Alaska Peninsula, and some marginal VFR up over the Kilbook Mountain areas, with IFR getting a little more extensive from about Nikolsky all the way out to Shimia. Otherwise, the northwest here, VFR conditions down the coastline, all VFR till you get to about Cape Newenham. And for Anaktuvuk passes, VFR for the Brooks Range, both north and south entrances of those two passes. Lake Clark and Merrill, look for VFR becoming marginal on the eastern approaches for both these passes tomorrow afternoon. And rainy VFR, conditions lowering, but should stay VFR even on the eastern entrance throughout the day tomorrow. Windy VFR both north and south. Isabel, same forecast VFR for the eastern Alaska Range. Mentasta, Tanita VFR, possible lower conditions on the eastern entrance, but I don't think they'll reach marginal VFR. For Portage, though, that's another story. Marginal VFR with IFR forecast for the eastern entrance, and for the Chilkoot and White Pass, VFR. From there, looking at the freezing levels, 8,000 feet here through the central interior from the eastern Arctic coast, covering much of interior Alaska, 10 to 12,000 feet here over the southern southeast coast, and then some cooler air aloft out over the southwest Bering, western Aleutian areas down to 6,000 feet in that area, warmer up over the Russian Far East. Icing threats here, that moisture coming northward. Pretty good area of possible light to isolated moderate rime icing here for the North Gulf Coast across south central Alaska, specifically the Kenai Peninsula, western Alaska Range, down across Bristol Bay, spreading northward into the Kuskokwim Delta during the afternoon hours, and then back across the Pribilof Islands. And then some more scattered areas and showers there coming up toward Kodiak Island, even into the afternoon, the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians. And upper level windfall chart showing a good south to southwest flow here. Going to pull that frontal system up across Kodiak tonight, and then that next system developing down here is going to move rapidly northward in this flow, and again bring the gale force winds to the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay area on Sunday. Otherwise, looking at 3,000 feet or 9,000 feet tomorrow, southerlies to southeast, 25 to 35 knots, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay. Easterlies at about 35 right across the Pribilofs. Lighter winds as usual here over the interior, becoming light and variable up under that high pressure area over the northern areas. And 3,000 foot winds, 25 to 35 knots, south-southeasterly winds here at Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Easterlies at about 25, as high as 30 knots for the Pribilofs, lighter and more northeast out over the western Aleutians. And kind of a northwest breeze here along the southeast coast. Turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop there with those gusty winds, Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, all of Bristol Bay, Kilbuck Mountain areas to just south of the Kuskokwim River there, with light to isolated moderate chop covering, increasing and spreading northward across the Yukon Delta. And after the break of Hangar Flying, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome our guest, John Parrott, who's the airport manager for Ted Stevens International. John, welcome back to Hangar Flying.
Thanks, Harry. Pleasure to be here.
John has a long history with Alaska and with aviation. He flew the F-4 Phantom at Elmendorf back in 1980. He's flown the AT-38, F-16, and B-1. John retired from the U.S. Air Force in 1998. Thanks for your service.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.
John's held a number of positions at the airport, including ops manager, deputy director, and has been the airport manager since 2008. John's also an accomplished small airplane pilot, having owned at one time a Tri-Pacer and later a C-180, Cessna 180. John, when you were in the program last, we talked about flying some of the fun airplanes that you've flown. But tonight I want to talk about what may be a potential threat to flying that may not be apparent to our audience. Been a lot of press lately about weeds on Lake Hood, and in particular the invasive species Alodia. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly, Harry. I'd be happy to. We first need to understand that we have two distinct issues concerning weeds in Lake Hood. A number of pilots have come to us in past summers, but in particular this summer, complaining about the control issues they have with their aircraft due to the weeds getting fouled in the front of amphibious gear, in the water rudders, and just generally making it very difficult to maneuver around the lake. The good or bad news is that those are simply a bumper crop of native Alaskan weeds. The sunlight and the warm weather we had in May got those off to a very, very good start for them. We've had the lake rake. I'm sure many people have seen it out there, out every day, taking somewhere between 50 and 80 cubic yards of weeds a day out of the lake. And yet people tell us as soon as it leaves an area, they look out and they can't tell it was there. So it's a challenge this year. In part, that shows that the lake is healthier and healthier and has good oxygen in it and supports life, but it makes it very difficult to operate aircraft. Now, a couple weeks ago, the news that we were given was additional news, but different news, and that is that the invasive species Alodia had been discovered in Lake Hood. This was disappointing, but not really a surprise. We knew that Alodia had been in the Kenai area for years, in the Fairbanks area for a number of years, and had been in the Anchorage area since at least 2011. Little Campbell Lake, DeLong Lake, and Sand Lake have all been documented as having Alodia. And in fact, there was a program planned to be implemented this summer to try to eradicate the Alodia in those lakes. Once we were notified that we had Alodia in Lake Hood, we contacted the agency that's responsible for invasive species, which is the Department of Natural Resources. They came out last week, the week after we were notified, and did a survey of the lake. And they found that unfortunately it wasn't just an isolated spot, one or two places. It was concentrated in a couple areas, but it was throughout enough of the lake that their recommendation is that we do a lake-wide treatment, much like will be done to those other 3 lakes, and both DNR and the airport through DOT are now looking to try to get the permits to add Lakes Hood and Spenard to that existing program that had already been through the environmental process.
Oh, John, that's a great description. So if I can summarize what I think you said, the problem in Lake Hood right now for people taxiing around is the native species.
That's correct.
Because it has flourished with the weather we've had.
Yep.
And I think what the concern with the Lodia is that it survives under a lot of different conditions, including under the ice.
Lives under the ice in Fairbanks.
And they don't want it to spread around the state.
Nope.
So real quickly, we've got about a minute and a half, a little bit more than that. Talk about what pilots can do, and also I think you have a website where they can go to
We do.
get some hints on how to deal with this.
We do. If you go to the airport website, the International Airport website, anchorageairport.com, you can click through to the Lake Hood General Aviation section, and that has a number of links to best practices. As the airport operator, we're not really the experts, but folks such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Seaplane Pilots Association, and other people that have dealt with various kinds of invasive species all over the country have got a number of helpful tips out there on how to prevent and minimize the spread of these things. Aircraft obviously have access to a number of areas in Alaska that other vehicles don't. Alodia is not limited to aircraft spread. Some of those other lakes it's in don't have aircraft operations. It can be transported by trailer tires, boats, car tires, hip waders, float tubes, any number of ways to get from one body of water to another. But for us, making sure that the seaplane operators, the float plane operators, attempt to minimize the spread of any invasive species. Currently, Alodia is the hot topic, is important. Okay, John, I would like to get you on another time, next time, and we'll talk about some of the things that are going on at the airport. Sounds good, Harry. Thanks for being on the program tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the program. This is a concern, and I would add, to reinforce what John said, please look at these precautions so we can hopefully mitigate the spread of Alodia, but also make sure you've got good directional control if you're working off either an amphib or a straight float airplane, because you don't want to discover that you don't at the last minute. So be careful, and until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Looking at the marine forecast here on the north coast, southeast winds 10 to 20 knots, northwest 15 to 20 knots along the south coast. Northwesterlies here 20 knots, 4-foot seas for Clarence Strait. Light southerly winds there for Stevens Passage. South winds up to 25 knots tomorrow afternoon for northern Lynn Canal. And then the outlook for Sunday, light west winds here on the north coast, and then increasing as you head down the coastline. Small craft advisories for the central and south coast there. Out of the northwest at 25 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas. No change for the southern inner channels, but northerlies at about 15 there for Stevens Passage. Afternoon winds from the south for northern Lynn Canal at about 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds at 15 knots, but we've got gales here for the central and western North Gulf Coast area. The Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, and Shelikof Strait, all 35-knot winds tomorrow. Seas running 9 to 14 feet. Small craft advisories here along the east side of Kodiak Island. And southern Cook Inlet also under the influence of a small craft advisory tomorrow. And then for Sunday, look for some lighter winds, except still northeast, increasing to 35 knots in the afternoon there for Shelikof Strait, but easterlies at 25 here along the east side of Kodiak Island and the Barrens in across Kamishak Bay. Lighter, more variable winds here as you head east along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay tomorrow, small craft advisories, east winds at 25, and also small craft advisories here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula for those southerly winds with seas up to 9 feet down in that area. And then some gale force winds show up just about all areas here, 35 knots out of the east here, Bristol Bay and on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Southeast 30 to 35 knots on the Pacific side with seas 12 to 14 feet there. And then for the central Aleutians tomorrow, light variable wind conditions here to south to southeast, 15 to 20 knots for the Fox Islands, and northeast winds 15 to 20 knots for the western zones. Taking a look at the forecast for Sunday, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots here from the Atka area all the way out to Shemya. That's where the 20-knot winds will be. And then for the Fox Islands, easterlies 25 to 30 knots, so small craft advisories there, seas running 7 to 12 feet. Southwest coast here, south of Nunivak Island, east winds at 25 knots, small craft advisories for the northern Bering Sea, small craft advisories for the Pribilof Islands as well, seas 7 to 8 feet. And then it looks like a full gale here coming into the area south of Nunivak Island, east 40 knots there, seas building to 11 feet. Small craft advisories out for the Pribilofs on Sunday, and 30-knot winds there north of Nunivak Island to 20 knots over the northern Bering Sea. Along the eastern Arctic coast, kind of a light variable wind condition at 5 to 10 knots there on the eastern stretch of the coastline. Southerlies at about 10 knots for the central coast, picking up to 20 knots here, Point Hope, Cape Lisburn. In this area, lighter southeasterly winds on down toward Wales. And then the outlook for Sunday, no change here for the central Arctic coast. Light east winds here for the west side, up to 15 knots there from Wales to Point Hope. And then easterlies at about 10 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline out to Demarcation Point. And for tonight, looking for wind and rain to increase here over Kodiak Island. Clouds increase, chances of rain spreading over Bristol Bay as well later tonight. Wet conditions over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutian areas. Showers tapering off here over the Yukon Delta and Kuskokwim Valley areas, but still a chance here along the western Alaska Range. Eastern Brooks Range, some lingering showers, otherwise areas of smoke. Again, tomorrow, thickest over the central interior, but that'll spread over the Tanana and upper Yukon valleys as well, with but not quite as thick. Otherwise, rain up to the North Gulf Coast. Isolated showers for south central Alaska. Better chances of rain here to the southwest. And then the next storm brings rain and gales in across the southeast Bering. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.